on this and other campaign issues, we're joined now by Romney supporter and Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, who's in Milwaukee. Governor, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good to be back, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You said Friday that you're bewildered by the Romney campaign since he picked Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan as his running mate. You said that you expected Romney to start running a bolder reform agenda campaign, and that so far he hasn't. Why not?
Well, I think part of it is dealing with some of these tough issues on the side. I think if they continue to be more aggressive, just as they were days after Mitt Romney picked Paul Ryan. What I loved about the pick of Paul Ryan wasn't just that he was from Wisconsin or even about Paul Ryan himself. It was the fact that before that we knew that Mitt Romney was qualified. I mean, his time in the private sector saving jobs, his time turning the Olympics around, his time as a governor helping balance the budget without raising taxes in a way that helped create jobs. But when he picked Paul Ryan, what it said to us was he's not just qualified, he's got the courage and the passion to be an exceptional president. I want to see more of that in the campaign trail. I particularly want to see that in the debates. And I think that's what people are hungry for. They want that in states like Wisconsin and others across the country.
But Governor, it's been a long time. It's been over a month since he picked Paul Ryan. He had the Republican convention. He had the week of the Democratic convention. We've had a couple of weeks since then. Are they wasting Paul Ryan, and are they wasting the opportunity to present a reform agenda?
Well, I think it's not just about Paul Ryan being out and about. I've talked to Paul a lot here. He was just in Florida the other day. I think he's doing an effective job out in the campaign trail. I'd just like to see more of the enthusiasm that I saw when the two of them were together early on. I think that's what Mitt Romney believes in. I think that's what will draw people to Mitt Romney, not only in my state, but in states across the country, particularly battleground states. And I think that's really what's at stake here. We talk a lot about this comment that was talked about this week. I think that takes away from the larger issue, which is pretty simple. This president and his allies largely define success. They measure success in government by how many people are dependent on the government, particularly on unemployment benefits. I think Mitt Romney, I and others, I think the majority of people in this country, we define success in government as just the opposite, by how many people are not dependent on the government. Not because we've kicked them out into the streets, but rather because we've empowered small businesses in the private sector to create more jobs. That leads to greater prosperity and freedom for all of our people, and I think that's the focus we've got to have. The more we get off on these side issues, whether it's individual taxes or this video comment, that really distracts from the larger debate that is at stake here, one in which we've seen the last 4 years have failed. I think we need to move towards one that will have a vision of us moving forward again.
Well, let's talk. You say it's a distraction, but it is big news, and we can't ignore it. The video that was released this week, because a lot of voters are receiving this information, in which Romney told big donors last May in Florida at a fundraiser about the 47%, he said, actually 46% of Americans who don't pay federal income taxes. Let's watch what he said.
There are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they're victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it.
Governor, what do you think of that, particularly Romney saying that 47% of Americans think of themselves as victims?
Well, I don't know about the specifics of that and what he meant, but I can tell you in the larger context, most people I talk to, including people who are unemployed today here in the state of Wisconsin, don't want to be. They'd like to be able to go out and grab a job in the private sector. They'd like to be able to put food on the table and clothes in the backs of their kids and live a better life out there. The vast majority of people who are somewhat dependent, particularly when it comes to unemployment benefits in this state and across this country, don't want to be. They want to live the American dream, and that's the contrast here. We've got a president who I think has largely taken an attack at the American dream, at the American spirit, at the American free enterprise system. And in President Romney, we'd have someone who would embrace that and lift that up so that all people could better themselves and improve their livelihood. And I think that's the message. That's the aspirational message that we need to hear. It's certainly what drew people like me many, many years ago to someone like President Reagan, who shared the same beliefs, but did so in a very optimistic way. I believe that's what Governor Mitt Romney believes in. I believe the more we get him out on the stump, particularly in states like Wisconsin, and hear that, the better off he's going to be in this election.
You know, Governor, that's a great statement, and if he'd said that, there wouldn't have been any problem. Of course, he didn't say that, and this is the last I'm going to ask you about it. We'll move on. But, you know, he seemed to write off. He didn't say, well, you know, these are people who are in hard times, but they want to get out of hard times. He was basically saying they're 47%, they're victims, they feel entitled, and they're never going to vote for me anyway, so I'm not going to worry about them. You know, it isn't what he didn't say what you just said.
Well, I think that's but that's the contrast. What we hear on the campaign trail, we hear the other side. In fact, you heard a little bit of that even from Mr. Gibbs earlier, this mindset that somehow, even after 4 years, this president isn't responsible for this economy, the 43 months of unemployment above 8%, the 23 million of our fellow Americans who are looking for work today, that even in the foreign policy, even in the budget discussions, he said, well, that's not our fault, that's the Congress' fault. Well, that's a failure to lead. We need Mitt Romney out there making a case about how his leadership is not only going to ultimately win this election, but more importantly,